Hey, good morning, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club. This is our January book, even though this is the first week of February. We're doing this interview just a little bit later than normal, but it's still going to be great. I'm really looking forward to talking about this book, and because our book is it's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. By ZOE THOROGOOD, and it is a fantastic book. It's smart and it's skillfully cartooned and it plays with the form in really interesting ways, and I just really loved it, and I'm really excited to talk to our guest. There's Zoe. Hello,
Hi.
Zoe. How are you?
Nice words. Yeah, existing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're just for anybody who's watching at home, we're gonna do we're gonna open up for Q&A in a little while. If you want to throw your comments in the YouTube chat, we will see if we use yours or not. But otherwise, mostly Zoe and I are gonna talk, and it's gonna be awesome. I always start the show with the same question because I really like this question. It's a really obvious question too, I think, but why comics? Of all the things you could be doing, of all the ways you could be expressing yourself, you chose comics. And comics is incredibly labor intensive. And it's also typically, it doesn't pay especially well. So I'm curious, what is it about the medium that thrills you, that excites you, that makes you go, I got to put 8 hours a day into hunched over a drawing board doing this?
Well, I think my answer is probably not the answer that people want, but I'm going to shoot for honesty. So since I was a kid, I've been really into stories, like when, I consider myself a storyteller. Like that's what I call myself in the book. It's like, sure, I'm a cartoonist, but storytelling is what I love. That's kind of what makes me tick and what makes me human, in my opinion. And so when I was a kid, I was really into, books. I was a big reader as a child. I was really into video games. Just into things that would tell a story that I could, that I could immerse myself into. As I got older, I was really, originally I wanted to be an author, stereotype, just a novelist. Realized I can barely spell, I don't understand grammar, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I got really into theater when I was about 10. I got really into theater, and for years, that was my thing. I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a playwright. That was, what I really wanted to do. But that path was so, how do you do that? That's even harder to get into than comics. And I was really into reading comics, especially manga. I was really into Death Note. Kind of got me obsessed with comics. But it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I have to do this. I just loved it as something that I was reading. I was terrible at art. All my art teachers would tell me quite vocally and tell my parents that I needed to stop trying to draw because I just wasn't very good at it. But I figured, I can't remember how old I was, but I think I must have been about 16 or 17, and I'd started getting into art because I was considering working in video games. But at some point along the line, I realized that I needed to make stuff by myself. Very selfishly, I needed, if I have a vision in my head, it's something that only I can complete. And comics is an art form that somebody can do by themselves. And I've always loved comics. I love comics. I love reading comics, but it's not something that I was oh, I've been reading comics since I was 12 and I decided this is what I wanted to do. It was more, I want to tell a story. Comics is something that I can do alone. And that's why comics.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I'm especially perplexed by the notion that you had art teachers that said you were not a good artist.
Well, they were right. I was not good. I'm not. That's why I hate the word talented. I have zero talent. It is all hard work, blood, sweat, and determination and sacrifice. That's all it is. I was easily one of the worst in the class for years. And I hate learn. I'm not a good learner. I can't, be told what to do. And it's they're oh, paint this fruit bowl. Well, I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to do it. It's terrible. I've always been that way. It's with art now, I don't consider myself a good artist. I never studied the fundamentals. I don't really understand anatomy, perspective, any of that. I've just done it enough to the point where it's I can sort of grasp those kinds of things. But to me, it's it was never about the art, it was more about what is it trying to convey. Like that's what's important to me. But yeah, my art teachers were right in that I was bad at art. I mean, they should have seen that I was passionate about it and tried to, you know, fuel that fire rather than try to dampen it. But, you know.
Yeah, and I fundamentally I think that you're wrong. I think you are a really good artist. You're maybe not you're not you know, like a fancy artist or something, you know, but
potatoes.
There's plenty of there's lots of fantastic use of perspective here. There's really good use of shape and space.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean,
what's going on. There's no
yeah. But it's stuff that I don't think I understand how I do it. I think it's kind of become something that I've done so much that you know, I can tell if something looks good, and it's like I'm very, you know, I've got very visual language in my mind. It's just not something. If somebody was like, "Oh, draw this building in perspective with like lines and stuff," I'm like, what's the vanishing point? You know, like it's more like that. Like I don't know how to draw a skeleton and things like that. It's just, you know, my knowledge of anatomy is just from just looking at people, everyday people, and just kind of like making mistakes and learning from my own mistakes, but not really, you know, learning in a traditional sense. Yeah, I don't.
Sure. No, but like I said, I think you're good. I think you've got, I mean, when I just page through this, every page, I think, oh, look, there's a great perspective there. Oh, that's an interesting shape there. I don't know. I think you're down on yourself in a way that you probably shouldn't be in terms of your art, you know? But that's all good. Did you, so you studied art in, well, what we would call high school, 16, 17, you were saying. Did you go to college to do art as well, or? Yeah,
so how it works in the UK is we have high school until you're 16. Most kids will stay on at high school, and they will pick, like, you know, an amount of subjects to continue learning or whatever. I really struggled in school at that age. I kind of like, I didn't think, you know, I didn't have much going for me. And all like the kids that maybe didn't have much going for them go to college, which is not university. College is where you go when you're 16 to 18. And there are all these like really like, you know, courses where it's like, oh, you know, we have to stay in education till we're 18. So we'll just kind of throw these kids into these rooms. So I chose art because I was like, well, I'm enjoying art. And it just seemed like I don't want to do math or science or any of these things. I didn't really know what I was doing with my life until that point. But so I did art and design at college, but it wasn't good. Like it wasn't like in, you know, pretentious art school, prestigious or whatever. That, you know, it was very you know, it was just where kids went, where, you know, we didn't really have any other opportunities, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you also mentioned they wanted you to draw bowls of art, which is bowls of art, bowls of apples or whatever. And that's, you know, that's very different than storytelling.
Well, I think I have a lot of opinions about like how art is kind of taught these days, because there are so many jobs in art and there's so much money to be made in art, but art schools don't. How many people make careers based off like original, you know, like oil paintings these days? Not many, but a lot of people make careers doing, you know, concept art and, you know, commercial illustration and, you know, things like that, and those things are just completely overlooked. I didn't even know these things existed. So yeah. Anyway,
and did you just go to art in college 16 through 18, or did you continue past that?
No, 18 I left. I left education as soon as I could. I wanted out way earlier.
Yeah. And did you start drawing comics at that point?
Okay, so wait, no, I just lied to you. My parents wanted me to go to university. My parents, it was very much, I imagine my parents might be watching this live stream, but with my parents, it was very much like, you need to go to university or you can't live with us anymore, because I wasn't very, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, which was make stuff, you know, like I've always been a kid I've been a creative kid. It's, you know, with theater or, you know, art, or I was really into martial arts for a long time, just like anything. I was like, I just want to do stuff. And, you know, the real world just didn't appeal to me. And so my parents were like, you know, you're going to have to go to uni. I tried to go to uni for 3D game art and then I quit. very quickly. But luckily at that point, I had an internship. I got an internship with a game studio in London doing concept art. So I was kind of in doing concept art for video games. But really what I wanted to do was comics. But that was something that just seemed so impossible to get into at that time. So I thought, okay, well, I guess, you know, I'm making money doing like freelance concept art and things. I was living in a house with like 11 other people at this student flat. Like I was living off student loans. It was very chaotic. And I was like, I mean, I must have been like 19, 20. And that was when I was trying to pitch my first book, The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott. But I obviously didn't have any comic credits to my name at that point. And I knew I had something. I was like, this project, like this needs to exist. I know I have something here. But I didn't see it ever coming to fruition. And, you know, it got rejected everywhere I said it, apart from Avery Hill. So. Right.
And did you like literally just do the whole book without having a home for it? You did it on
I know I didn't. I knew that wasn't something that was going to happen, because this was when I was about 20 years old. I had 1 year left of student loans. And so I was thinking, well, if I don't get a job, if this book doesn't get picked up in the next year, I need to go into the real world. But I knew I was like this. It was an intensive, like making that book. Like you said, like comics, it's so intensive. I don't think people realize how intensive it is, how much work it is. And I was like, I can't draw this entire thing and then see nothing of it. So I knew I wanted somebody to take a chance on it, and I knew it was good. Well, you know, like I knew like what I had, like my pitch and my like the example pages I had. I was like, this. People are digging it, like online. I would post it online and people would be, you know, all about it. And I had all these editors that were interested in it, but then it would just hit a brick wall, which I didn't really understand why. It was always like, oh, you know, editors would be like, oh, we're going to green light this. We're going to get this, you know, picked up. And then they'd even like 2 months would go by and I'd be like, so what about that, you know, green light? And they'd be like, oh, well, so-and-so says, you know, you're not ready, or, you know, I'm pretty sure that was code for, you know, nobody knows who you are. Right. So yeah, that was challenging.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't draw the whole book without knowing it was going to be something. At least at the point I was at.
Had you done shorter comics before that? I did
one short web comic, which was the Angel like autobio story that was mentioned in It's Lonely, and I put that up on Gumroad, I think. But that was the only thing I'd the only comic I'd done. So I guess it was pretty ballsy of me to be like, oh, I haven't really done anything, publish my book. But I think I've always just been that kind of person. Sure. It's like, why are you not believing in me?
Yeah, I've talked to a number of UK artists who've said that, you know, they use things like Thought Bubble, for example, as their way of sort of breaking into comics, you know, doing smaller books and then selling them at a festival, that kind of a thing. But you went straight to, I'm going to do a book. I love this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of that has to do, that makes a lot of sense. Like going like, you know, like Thought Bubble, fantastic place. I absolutely love Thought Bubble. But I think at the time I'm massively antisocial, but even more so back then. And the idea of doing that at that point, it wasn't an option for me. And yeah, I'm just like a very stubborn person. It's like, if I want something, I'm going to like try my all to get it. So it's like when I had this pitch, I was like, somebody's going to pick it up. Somebody's going to do it. I'm going to throw this against the wall until it sticks, at least until the end of the year. And then I'm going to, you know, have my tail between my legs and find a real job. But yeah.
How close to the end of the year did you get before?
It was a little bit scary. I didn't have much money in my bank, and I was kind of getting a little bit scared because I was thinking I'm gonna have to move back with my parents, and I'm gonna have to find like. But I mean, I still like, I had a lot of ties with like video game industry people, and I had been doing small freelance projects in video games, so I wasn't massively worried. But I didn't want a studio job, and I didn't want because when I was working in concept art, you know, because I love video games. I love video games more than I love comics, which I know is massively blasphemous to say. But and I work in video games. I assumed I would enjoy it as much as I enjoy comics, but I actually didn't, because what I enjoyed about concept art was the storytelling behind, like, you know, it's concept art is art that narrative art, you know, it's art that tells a story. It's not art for art's sake. You're not drawing something to look pretty. You're drawing something to express, something or tell a story.
Yep.
And it was that part of it that I enjoyed. But the problem was that working in a studio, you're part of like 400 other people, and you're like, as like a lowly concept artist, there's like a bunch of like producers and like big execs that are like, no, do that again. Do that. That character needs to have like different hairstyles. This character needs to be a different age or whatever. And you have your reasons why they are the way they are, but it's just, the big man says no. And I don't really like it when the big man says no. So I was like, this is not something that I want for myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of it is the financial rewards between the two art forms, right? Like, comics, like even a big success, like a big success, you can get rich. It's possible. But, a typical success in comics it's a relatively small payout. Whereas a video game, in many cases, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars, And so, I guess I get why that environment's like that, but it's not great for a lot of artists.
No. And I think like, it's one thing that when I'm older, like, I don't know how many comics I have in me. I have no idea. I imagine there'll be a point where I don't want to do comics anymore. And I love I love indie games. I'm not much of like a big AAA game fan. Like, I don't play many of those, but like, I love indie games. I love games that are made by just like one person or a small group of people. And I would love to be able to learn all the skills needed to do that. As it stands, I can't code, I can't animate, I can't do any of that stuff. But at some point, like, that's something that I would love to explore, because I think video games are a medium that can, allow for so many more things, because there's just so many more types of, art forms involved in a video game that you don't have on paper. But I think that was something that bringing it back to It's Lonely was that people often ask what inspired It's Lonely, expecting to hear other comics. But I think mostly I was inspired by video games I played, because I think there were so many, especially like indie games, that really play with the form in ways that I haven't seen before. I was really inspired by, there was a game called Doki Doki Literature Club, which was a very meta game where, there's a character who knows she's in a video game and she's trying to manipulate the game and like files on your actual computer. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is amazing. And like, that was something that like really inspired the book. There's like a scene, I don't want to spoil to people who haven't read it, who are in chat, but like, there's a scene like halfway through that was like so inspired by that game. Because I don't see that many comics that mess with the form to the extent that I think that they can be messed with. So I think It's Lonely also was me trying to be like, hey guys, we could do all this crazy stuff. Video games are doing it now. Like, we can do it. We can do all this like form messing things. There are no rules.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are definitely comics that mess with the genre, but you're right. They are few and far between, because most people are worried specifically about narrative. It's one of the things that I found really interesting about It's Lonely is how much you kind of went back and forth between I have to tell a story, but I also have to play with how that story is told. I mean, to the point where the book starts over about 40 pages in, you go back to the cover again. And you start the story again. And I thought that was really fascinating and really interesting. Actually, it's more like halfway in, isn't it? That you come back to the first page. I don't know. I thought it was just lovely and thoughtful and a really good use of the form. So you're pretty awesome.
You.
That's what I'm trying to say to you. Yeah.
Try my best.
So you're for the impending blindness, you were almost out of money. You almost had to move home, and then you got an offer from the publisher. What was that like?
I mean, it was a relief. Although they didn't with Avery Hill, because I mean they're a very small they're a small publisher based in London. Their big thing is they help creators that haven't been that aren't mainstream yet. They help new creators, and I just really appreciate them for that. Like I wouldn't be here without Avery Hill, basically. But they're a small publisher, so they couldn't give an advance. Their deal is very is very creator friendly, but there's nothing up front. And so there was a little bit, I ended up taking several comic jobs at once, which was a terrible idea. and ended up producing some work that I am not very proud of, but was stuff that I just needed to do. But the fact that I had Billy was like, okay, now I can prove myself. I have this opportunity to prove myself, and it needs to work. Because like I don't. It's like drawing from other people's scripts is something that I have done a fair bit like the past few years, but it's something that I want to kind of wean out of my scheduling, because I don't enjoy it as much. It's like, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you need to get paid, as an artist, like that's how it is. That's what you have to do. If you're doing your own book, it's way more of a risk. It's like working with Image. I love Image's deals so much, but again, it's like you have to really it's on you. You don't get an advance unless you're, I don't know. I don't really know how it works. I've heard that like if you're like a big enough name, they give you an advance. That might be not true. I don't know.
I think there's a couple of people, but overall 98% of the people who work for them are working on spec. Yeah.
But I love that, because I love the kind of risk of like, okay, I have to make something good. Like I'm not getting paid. Like the whole time I was making It's Lonely, there was no money. It was like the book is going to rely on me to do it. And Image don't really, handle much, marketing or any of that. Like this is on me. This is my thing. If it goes wrong, it's my fault. And I love that.
I want to stay with Billy just for just a minute longer, just because I'm really interested in sort of that first process of, when you do a book for the first time. It's because doing comics is really hard, and Billy's 150 pages, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't have a copy at my hand. Yeah, so that's a lot of work to do that first.
Yeah,
time.
My publisher said that. My editor Ricky, bless him, said, this should be 100 pages. Like this is your first book, Zoe. Like bring it down. And I was like, I can't. Like the original pitch, it was 200 pages, which I think would have killed me. But and once I did the layouts and stuff, I started properly scripting it, and I was like, this can't. Like it has to be at least 150. But yeah, it was a very big undertaking, and I was also working on another graphic novel that I had like 70 pages for at the same time, and that was what I was getting a page rate for, which was like making me live, which was crazy. I was working like 14-hour days for 3 months.
Wow. Yeah.
It was bad. Don't recommend that. But I was young, I'm still young, but I was 20, so it was like back in the old days. But yeah, it was something that I'm glad that I did, for like some reasons that maybe aren't too great, but it's the fact like I know I can do it. It's like I felt like, and it's terrible, but I felt so good at that point. Like once I got into the swing of doing 14-hour days, like I felt crazed, but it was like this really good feeling of I'm making my things, I'm doing what I want, I'm building this like career. It's all on me to do this, and like I was feeling insane, but it was good. It was a good type of insane. Yeah.
And Billy went on to be a modest success, at least.
Yeah, no, it did well. It did really well. I think one of the big problems with it was that people were struggling to get it outside of the UK, which was frustrating. But it didn't do what kind of like Tilly Walden. It was another Avery Hill person, and her books were reprinted. I believe they were reprinted by an American publisher, whereas. Whatever, it's complicated, but yeah, it did well. It did well for a first book, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that gave you the confidence to keep going on, yeah? Or were you going to go on no matter what?
I don't think if I had Billy, I would be doing comics. But I think the biggest thing was that I now had something. As much as as flawed as I think Billy is now, because I wrote that book when I was 19, 20, and there's like a lot of things obviously I've learned and I would do differently today. But as flawed as that book is, it's something that I have a physical copy of, and I can show to people, and I can be like, I can do this, and other publishers go, oh, she can do this, whereas before that was my problem. Is like it was kind of more like, I think I can do this. Why don't you guys believe me? Whereas now I had a book. and it
Right.
had, good reviews. It had good critic reviews. People, there was a group of people who enjoyed it, and so it was like I now have something to offer, and I have proof. So I think that was kind of the biggest, like the most important. Moving forward, that was the most important part of that.
Yeah, and that I assume led more or less directly to you being able to do this with Image.
Not entirely. I actually, there was a book I wanted to do before. Like, It's Lonely was not something that I ever planned to do. It really came about as a result of the start of the book is true. Like, the first bit of the book, I don't know how, like, if people think, 'cause, like, the problem is with the book is, like, there's a lot of absurdity, so I think it's hard to tell what's real and what's not. But the book really did come about from desperation. And before I was working on that, I'd already pitched a book to Image that I wanted to do. They got greenlit and everything, so I was like anticipating working on that. But then, things happened. I had this kind of like this breakdown moment. And from that breakdown, things for It's Lonely started. But I didn't really know it was going to be a book at that point. It was something that I was just doing in my spare time, and I was just doing to kind of get through a traumatic breakup. And but I started posting stuff online, and people were really digging it, like more so than anything I'd posted previously. And so I messaged Eric Stevenson, publisher over at Image, and I was like, so I know I already have a project that I told you I was going to do that was already greenlit and everything, but I have this really insane thing that I need to work on. Is there any chance that you guys would publish it? Mm-hmm. Assuming that he would say no, because at this point I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this book is like so personal and so just like out of like anything I'd ever seen before, in a way that like I didn't know if it was good or not. I was just like, I knew it was different, which does not necessarily mean it's good. But Eric loved it, and he was like, no, you're an artist, we get it, like you're gonna so yeah, like Billy didn't lead directly to It's Lonely. Billy led to another project that I wanted to do, but then got shelved because of It's Lonely. It's just the way of things.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Do you are the original project that got greenlit? Are you going to continue that project?
Eventually.
Okay.
Because I'm currently working on a bunch of little small projects. I tend to just I want to work on what I want to work on. I'm really I'm just a really frustrating person to work with. Like, I feel really sorry for any time I have an editor. Like with It's Lonely, I didn't have an editor. I was trying to save them. I was trying to save all the editors from it because I'm just a pain to work with. Sure. And so right now, it's like the project that I had pitched to Image that got greenlit. I was really excited about it at the time. And sometimes I get really excited about it. But right now, I'm excited about other things. So I want to work on those things. And at some point, that greenlit project I will do. This right now, I'm just kind of like, I like to just go with whatever it is that I want to be doing. And luckily, I'm at that point now where I kind of feel like I can be doing that. So, because I know if I'm excited about something, if I'm passionate about something, it will be, it will turn out better than something that I'm, not really feeling. So.
Absolutely. Very, very, very much so. I'm curious about your sort of your method of work. Do you write a full script ahead of time? Do you start doing layouts? Is it a hybrid between the two?
So my method is not really a method. It's more of it's like, I think whenever I try and explain it, I just say, like, I kind of get up in the morning, I sit at my desk, and then I just kind of like, just onto a piece of paper and just see what happens. I don't write scripts. The only times I've ever wrote scripts is quite recently, because I've been doing writing for DC recently, and you need to do some level of script. Although my scripts are very bare boned, but that works apparently, so it's all good. But
wait, hold on. Are you writing superhero comics?
I am.
Wow. I mean, I can, obviously anybody could do it. I wouldn't have thought of that necessarily by looking at your existing corpus of work. I wouldn't have gone.
Well, the thing is, I love I can enjoy, and it's like the media that I consume is so vastly different from each other. It's like if a story is told well, I will love it. You know, I don't care about genre. I don't care about like what age it's for, or you know, like how it's told, or any of that stuff. Like if it's a good story, I dig it. You know, like I don't read like superhero comics, but I was like really into like the Batman video games as a child. So it's like I have like love for these characters and stuff, and I like some of the movies. But yeah, like to me, it's like every project I do, I want to be completely different. You know, like Billy was very much like kind of like a young adult drama. It's Lonely is a autobio. The one that I pitched before the autobio that didn't get like that's kind of on hold right now is like an action horror that's like very inspired by manga. Yeah. So it's like everything I do, I want to be completely different. Yeah. And I just love telling stories, like, you know, whatever that is, whatever that looks like, that's what I enjoy doing. That's the other thing I got kind of worried about with It's Lonely, because it kind of blew up in a way that I didn't expect nor want necessarily. And there is a part of me that thinks, oh, people think this is what I do now. This is what to expect from me. But it's very much not. There's a project I'm working on right now for an existing IP that is not announced yet, so I can't say what it is, but which is so vastly different. It's Lonely. Like I don't think it could be any further away from it, like any more further away. So I'm really glad that's my next project. Just to be like, this isn't. You need to just kind of not have any expectations for what I'm going to be doing, what my career is going to look like, because it's going to go all over the place. Because I enjoy trying different things and, you know, telling different types of stories. And yeah,
sure. I think that there's a kind of a difference between doing your own original graphic novel, which is whatever the shape and size you want it to be, right? Mm-hmm. It's however the story works for you, and then being an artist drawing somebody else's script. But at least you've got your blueprint, and here's the shape and the size of the walls. And then when you're writing scripts for something specifically like a genre like superheroes, where there are particular rules that must be followed, you can't change, you can't play with those rules, particularly in most cases, and especially if you're just writing it and somebody else is drawing it, right? Like it has to be a certain way. You have to have an X number of pages, and you can't just add pages or take away pages, right? Like it's a very different kind of working.
For sure. And it's something that I am like struggling with and learning how to fit into the ways that I work. And there's definitely a lot more brick walls. But it's fun in different ways. You know, it's kind of, I see it as a puzzle. You know, it's kind of like, how can I put my own annoyances into somebody else's circus? How can I put my monkeys into somebody else's circus? So yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. But yeah, you're completely right. It's a completely different type of way of working.
Well, particularly about, you know, considering the things you were saying earlier about how you thought that you wanted to work in video games, but then, it's actually kind of soul crushing in a way.
Yeah,
you know?
But luckily, the projects that I've been doing that are existing IPs, there are ones that I would not consider working in just because the rules would be so strict. But the characters and the worlds that I'm playing with right now are quite open. Because I'm working on 3 projects right now, like interchangeably, that have like long deadlines, so it's not like I'm, you know, being crazy about it. But there's only one that's quite strict that I've been definitely having more problems with, that I'm not finding as fun, because it's very much like I'll have an idea and I'll be like, wow, this is awesome, like this needs to happen, and then the editor will speak to, you know, people higher up in the company, and they'll be like, oh, actually this can't happen because the continuity, this is happening, and I'm like, oh. So I feel like I'm having to come up with worse ideas, or I'm having to kind of, you know, there are just things where it's like, this would be so much better if they let me do this, but obviously there's all these reasons why I can't. And I definitely, I'm struggling with that a little bit. But I think the fun of playing in these worlds is kind of like, all the stuff I've said yes to is stuff that I'm a fan of. So I feel like a kid, like, it's like if my child self saw me getting offered these projects and I said no, kid Zoe would be very upset. So it's something that I feel like I kind of have to, like, yeah.
No, I understand. How, like, in terms of the labor, the time involved in working on something like It's Lonely versus working on an existing IP, is one easier than the other?
So working on my own stuff is way easier because I don't have to, well, especially with It's Lonely, I didn't have an editor. It was literally just me. And so the speed of that project, once I got started with it, it was really fast. Especially helped because it was about my previous year. So it's like I didn't have to think of a plot. I was like, oh, I just have to kind of, think of ways to kind of express things that had actually happened to me. And so like that was very fast. Whereas like working with existing things, I think the thing that I really struggle with is there's a chain. So it's like you as the creative, you come up with idea and then you have to tell your editor who then has to tell somebody else. And then it just becomes this thing where it's like then you have to wait 2 weeks for like, oh, actually we can't do this, or, oh yeah, this is great, go ahead. And it's like, well, 2 weeks have passed and I'm no longer that, like, it's like if I'm writing something, I'll get really into it. I want to hear back straight away. I want to be like, I want to get, keep going with this. I want to keep this snowball rolling. But so many times it just gets stopped. So yeah, like working on my own stuff is way, way faster. But also it's that whole risk thing of, I'm not getting paid up front. And I would love to get to a point, and I hope I will, where I can just work on my own stuff. Just 24/7. But I try right now, like the stage I'm at in life, I try and kind of, I'll do my own project. And then the next one, I kind of like want to like pad it out with other projects that I'm actually getting, paid for. And I know I'm going to get this kind of steady income because it's only like, I know how it's been selling, it's been selling pretty well, but I still haven't seen any money from it. I get paid, I think next month. And considering I've been working on it for like a year, well, I worked on it for 6 months, but it's been like a year since I started it. That's a year with nothing to show for it really, apart from, original art sales, which is a lifesaver. But yeah, it's challenging.
It's Lonely has done very well as far as I know. I don't know what the print run was.
It's in its third printing right now. So
yeah, that's crazy for a first book. You went out of print like the first week you came out.
Yeah.
That's nuts. In fact, when we picked it for the club, because we bought like 300 copies, the initial thing was, we don't have 300 copies to sell you. They actually, Image had to go transfer copies that were in Amazon's system that Amazon was going to sell to us to be able to do this so that we could make it, the book that was selected.
Wow.
Which has never happened to us ever in the time that we've done this, I was very happy, that Image was able to make that happen, but that's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I'm a little conflicted about it, honestly. I think when I was working on It's Lonely, I'd said to a few people that I was just, this project was just going to go quietly. It was going to be something that I did for myself, that I needed to make for myself, that I was going to put out there because other people seemed to connect with it. And then it just seemed to kind of blow up, and which is, I don't know how to explain this very well, but it's like I love making stuff. That's all I really care about. And luckily I'm at a point now where it's like the financial side of it is not, I mean, money, I've never been influenced by money. As long as I have enough to live, that's all I care about. So it's like, oh, you sell a bunch of books, you got you got a bunch of money. It's like, I don't care about that. Cool. So it's like the kind of, I think I struggle with success because my idea of success is measured by, am I enjoying myself? Is this something that is, meaningful to me? And I found like what is meaningful is reading not necessarily reviews, like the critic reviews, like is cool, yeah, cool, like it inflates my ego a little bit. But what really kind of means a lot is when people who kind of get it, who kind of understand, who are like, who are similar to me, who have had similar experiences to me in life, will, say it helped them, or people making kind of, making fan art or something that have been inspired by the book, or people saying, I stopped drawing for years and this book made me want to pick up drawing again, or this book made me want to, kind of express myself in various ways. And that's the stuff where I feel success then. Like that's how I kind of gauge that kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely struggle a bit. It's like my book was on, a bunch of end of year lists, and my art dealer messaged and was like, are you not going, like, I would be going like crazy right now. It's like I was on like the Forbes like top 10 list or whatever. And I was like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything from this. Which, I don't know.
Because I would think at the least that knowing that the book's a success means that it's going to be easier to get the next book greenlit.
Yeah.
And hopefully will mean that you don't necessarily have to do as much IP driven work. You know?
Sure. Yeah. And it's all good stuff. It just doesn't, it doesn't excite me, I guess. But yeah, no, you're right. Hopefully that does mean that.
Yeah. The decisions on print runs and stuff at Image, is that a decision that you are making, or is that a decision that Image is like, we in our consideration think you should be printing this many copies?
They recommend a number and then they send it for my approval, but I had no idea.
You had no idea. You just went.
I think the first print run I think was 12,000 copies, and I was just like, yeah. I mean, before the book came out, I in my head I was like, I want to sell 10,000. And then when they said, well, the first print run is 12,000, I was like, well, that's cool. That's around where I wanted to. But and I mean 10,000 in his lifetime, like not 10,000 in a week, 10,000 in his lifetime. So yeah, and then they with the second printing, they were like, oh, we're going to do like another like 10K or whatever. And I thought, well, that won't go, surely, it has to slow down. And then in a week, they're like, oh, we're doing a third printing. We're doing 15,000 this time. What?
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's
no,
fantastic.
I'm happy to see people talking about things that, I mean, the book is obviously about mental health. Like that's
Sure.
mostly what it's about, and it does make me really happy to see like the sales numbers in regards to, oh, this is tens of thousands of people who are reading these experiences, who are then provoked to communicate them, with other people. It's like I've seen like Reddit, people talking on Reddit. On mentioning stuff that happened, like there was a scene in the book, my school and my head teacher, in reference to, my friends trying to kill girls at my school, trying to kill themselves, saying, it's statistically it's going to happen. I saw people like directly quoting that scene and discussing how they'd had similar experiences with like, people in authority not taking them seriously.
Yeah.
And I thought like, oh, I feel like I've actually kind of done something helpful here, like as much as like the project was very selfish and self-indulgent, I've done something that means something more to people, that can open doors up to people, which is why my mum I think was quite upset with the book, or quite upset that I was some of the stuff that I had put in it, or some of the stuff that I was really open about. Like I know she's quite embarrassed, like my grandmother read it recently, and I know my mother was feeling a little humiliated by me and my shenanigans. But I think this kind of stuff of, just going to my mom and being like, well, this book is, kind of crazy and ridiculous as it is, has kind of allowed people to, discuss these things. I think one of the most incredible messages I had was from a father who his son was about my age and struggled with severe depression, and they'd never been able to talk about it. But yeah, he followed me on Instagram, so he bought the book and he read it, and then he was like, I think this is kind of allowing me to kind of, I have the language to kind of discuss this with my son now. And I just was like kind of overwhelmed by that. Like that was, I think, one of my favorite kind of comments I've had from it.
Yeah, no, and if you'll allow me, let me say directly to your mother, Mrs. Thorogood, your daughter has done really good here. This is important. Okay.
Yeah.
I also, I mean, I really do think that, at least to a certain extent, that you, not through luck necessarily, but you hit sort of the exact cultural moment when a book like this is really, really useful, because so many people have spent the last 2 or 3 years essentially being alone
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
trapped with their thoughts, you know, whereas it used to be that even when you were depressed, you could go out in the world and see other people around you and pretend that you were fitting in somehow. But when you have to be locked in your house because of COVID, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder for those thoughts to not overwhelm at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was great timing for me to have a suicidal breakdown and then turn into a book. Good job, Pat Zoe. I really should
That's not
thank
how
my
I would
ex
have
for
put it
dumping me. Like,
necessarily,
it was
but yeah.
great timing.
Yeah, no, because I mean, there's more people having more conversations about depression and other forms as well today, you know, these days than I've seen the previous decade combined, probably, you know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with COVID and the pandemic and just people being trapped with their own thoughts, you know, and not having
Well,
that
and
expression.
I think all that kind of allowed people to be more open, like online and stuff, and kind of like online wanting to have this connection with people like over the internet and things. And I think that kind of it opened just a lot of discussions that maybe haven't been so open in the past. And you know, I think that's great. And I think it's also kind of a generational thing. And another reason why I feel like my mum might be watching this and she might be upset that I'm talking about it so much, but you know, it's all good stuff. Love you, mum. But my mum gets quite upset. I think I put it in the book about my mum struggles with depression and she has done, you know, her whole life. It's a genetic issue in my family. And I think she gets quite upset at my openness because she thinks that it will, you know, oh, if people know you have depression, they're not going to want to hire you. You know, they're not going to want to know, you know, you're going to struggle with friends and all this kind of stuff. And I think that, you know, things like It's Lonely and things like, you know, there are lots of like video games and lots of movies that handle depression, like especially recently. All these things, these different like art is allowing people to be like this. You know, we can talk about this. We all like so many people, so many more people than you expect struggle with these kinds of things. And it just shouldn't be something that is hidden or something that's scary. You know, talking about it and making it visible, you know, makes people less scared of it. So
yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I want to talk about craft and stuff a little bit, but maybe Ben, I thought I saw a bunch of questions. Yeah, are there 100 questions? Good Lord. Well, we're not asking 100 questions.
Whoops.
We'll take a few. Hopefully, I'm covering most of it. That, you know, we don't have to go to the questions. Ben's gonna look for one here to put up. It's professional showbiz. So what can we do? There are really there's this a lot of questions. I can see this. We don't usually get this many. Thank you, everybody who's watching this. And if this is, let me while we're waiting for Ben to find a question, let me also say that if this is your first time watching this because Zoe tweeted it out to her people, we do a graphic novel every single month, and we always try to pick interesting, cool cartoonists. You get a great book. You get, in our particular case, where's the book plate here? Oh, it fell out. Okay, well, it comes with a signed book plate, and we do these interviews every month, and every month you get a good book, and it gets sent to your house. It's really good. So there's a URL right there at the bottom of the screen there. Please do it. So we have a question. Here's a question. Boom, there's the question. From Katie Robinson, or Kale Robinson. Did you face any obstacles balancing publicly submitting the concept of yourself to be known by others with the task of making something that had to be commercially viable? If so, how did you overcome them?
I think any other person apart from me would say yes, there were many obstacles there, but with me, I think the thing was the book was so I needed to make it so bad that I didn't care. I had a lot of people, especially people in the comic industry, who had read parts of the book asking me like, are you not worried what people are going to think of you? but just no, I think I'm at a point in my life where it's, I was the bullied loser kid in school. I'd already had my like trying to hide who I am from people phase, and I was like, it doesn't work. So it's like people like I am this person. If I put it in a book or not, I'm still this person. Be like I'm not. I decided I don't care to wear like a mask anymore or like hide like my silliness. So no, I personally didn't have any obstacles because I just truly just don't care. I know some people will read it and kind of get, like negative, things about me and who I am, but that's fine. Like that doesn't change the fact that I am still who I am, whether it's on paper or not. I think like obviously that was like my parents were worried because they thought, well, is this going to affect your career? And I definitely, there was a point where it's like when I was, it's even in the book when I was with my friend Izzy, and I said like, I don't know if I'm, trying to ruin my career with this. But again, like the book needed to happen. Like I genuinely, this sounds really dramatic, but at times I genuinely think making that book, saved my life. Like I only made it because I was just so suicidal and depressed. Like it was COVID, during COVID lockdowns, I live alone. My boyfriend, who was long distance, he dumped me, and it was like, so it was over video chat, and then just hung up, and it was like I was alone in my flat, and I was just like, he broke up with me as a result of me being suicidal, and it was just he just couldn't handle it, which fair enough. But I was in this place where I was like, oh my god, I am so alone, and the book was just my kind of my refuge. So no, like I didn't really face any obstacles because like the book was what it needed to be for me. I wasn't thinking, what are people going to think? Is this going to sell? Because I'm not the person that people maybe would want to read about. Like it was just not something that even kind of came into my field of vision. It was something that other people worried about on my behalf, but I just didn't care.
Yeah, and I would say that I think that broadly, being an artist and expressing yourself, the more honesty that you're able to do, the more people are going to respond.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I think the most affected I've ever been by art, like whether it's video games, whether it's music, whether it's comics, it's by people who are brave enough to put themselves out there, even when maybe they shouldn't. It's like that's the stuff that has affected me, and all my favorite artists, creators, no matter what medium, they're all people who really just like wear themselves with their art, and they just kind of just put themselves out there and kind of share all their demons. And so it's like, if I can be that for other people, like that's cool. And I love that. I admire that, and I'm not, I think I've just kind of embraced, that I'm maybe slightly just embarrassing and not everybody's cup of tea. And that's fine. And I'm just gonna, that's what art is for. Like art is for all that stuff, Yeah,
no, I absolutely agree. Do we have another question, Ben? I thought you had one lined up. Here we go. From Rom Leffler. How did you come up with the name "It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth," and what does it mean to you?
So I came up with that name the day. So the opening scene of the book is very accurate. The cover for the book, me dancing around my kitchen, was what happened. Like my partner had left me, and I was just listening to music, dancing around my kitchen. I didn't know what to do, and I was just being. I just felt insane, and I was just thinking, like, from an outside perspective, this would look like this would just be a cool image. So I started drawing. I came up with the idea for the cover the night that happened, that like the night where I was like, I just felt so suicidal. The title kind of just came with it. It was kind of a reflection of like, it was a lot of things that my ex had said to me on that phone call, and things about my kind of, I think, depression and isolation. It was one of the kind of my resolves at the end of the book was that it kind of makes you self-obsessed. And, I was trapped in this bubble, like this very lonely bubble that was just me. I was like in my own little world. And, but it's kind of like there's a level of like, not narcissism, that's not the right word, just self-obsession, that you're kind of trapped in this bubble all by yourself, and you're obsessed with it, and you don't see anything else around it, and but you live there because it's comfortable and it's what you know. And I think that's what I was trying to kind of convey with the title. I don't know if it all comes, but like when I came up with those words, it kind of just came to me, and it was not something that I really thought about. It was just like I was just drawing the cover, and I was just thinking of words, and I wrote it on my notes app. And I was like, yeah, this is really cool. But at that point, obviously, it wasn't a book, and I didn't think it was going to be a book. It was just, at that point, it was just a distraction, from what was happening around me. And it just stuck. I just loved it as a sentence. I loved it. I think it's like self-deprecating, and it's kind of self-aware, but it's also kind of like a beautiful string of words. So it just kind of worked.
Yeah. And did you say, I thought I heard you said you had drawn this illustration, the cover, at that point? Or
yeah, well, I was sketching it. Well, because it was that like that on that day. And I was just like dancing around my kitchen, and I sat down afterwards and thought, like it just would make a cool image. I felt like I wanted to capture how I felt. Like that image to me, like obviously other people looking at it don't have that, but when I look at it, that's just a capsule of those kind of like really strong kind of feelings that I had at that time, and that was just something that I wanted to draw. I don't know, but yeah, I started. I didn't finish it until a few weeks later, but I'd started it that day.
Yeah. Did you start the book that day, or just the illustration?
The illustration. I didn't know it was going to be a book until quite a lot later.
Okay.
But yeah, all the ideas, like all of the key kind of like what I wanted to do was there. I just didn't know it was going to be a book. I didn't want to publish it, especially like I had no interest in this ever seeing the light of day. But it was just kind of the reactions of people around me, and people kind of seeing pages that I'd done for it, that I'd just done for myself. And then I posted online just because I thought they were like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then people saying like, they related to it, or, it made them, feel things. And so I thought, well, okay, this is going to be a book, I guess.
Was it even a book at that point, or was it still just vignettes?
It was still just like, little parts. Like it wasn't, the thing was, it was the day I submitted my deadline for submitting, it was like September 19th or something last year. And I didn't even have a page order until that day. I didn't know what order the pages were going to be in, because it was never supposed to be a book. It was never written in a traditional sense of like, oh, we have like a start, beginning, end. This is where all the pages go. I just had scenes, which is like probably one of the reasons why, I mean, it feels very disjointed, and a lot of people think it's purposefully disjointed, which I think, it works. It works for what it is. But another big reason why it was disjointed is because I just didn't have an order for the pages. It was just very dysfunctional. But it worked.
That honesty about it, though, I think is one of the strengths of the book. I mean, I know what you mean, that it is disjointed feeling, but that's a thing that works about it. I think. I don't know.
I think it helps kind of with the whole, kind of trippy absurdity of it, where it's like, oh, we've just zoomed 10 years in the past with no kind of like, where are we now? And that's kind of how life did feel for a while. So it kind of, it ended up working.
No, very much so. Very much so. What was or was there any particular thinking? Because you're four different characters here, right? And was that always sort of a central through line for you? Was these different people that you are, or was that a thing that came out as you were working on the book, if that makes sense?
It kind of came out as I was working on it. Well, for a while, I always draw, so the guy that's just like the really simple lines, the one that's kind of mean to me sometimes in the book, I always draw that character. Like when I'm like posting like silly things on Instagram and stuff, I've been drawing that character for maybe like 6 years now. Just if I have something stupid that I want to say, or just I have a funny joke, or I have something self-deprecating I want to say about myself, I've always just drawn that character. which, so it's like, it's already, that was already a version of me that I already, had, that I'd already kind of been using. And that version of me, that character, was already in very early pages I did. But the other versions, it was more when I was writing, because the problem was that the year that the kind of the book mostly spanned, I was pretty much alone for most of it. And I realized that how was I going to communicate how I was feeling and kind of the conflicts that I was feeling in a way that wasn't just like my character sitting there and being like, so today I'm thinking this, but also I'm thinking this, but maybe, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I thought the best thing to do was split myself into different personalities and just kind of have them communicate. Just like that works on a page. Like comics is a visual art form. And also, I could do a lot of humor with that, if I have all these different versions of myself that are very like extreme parts of my personality. Because as much of the book that is very sad and tragic, I also do consider it a dark comedy. And that was like always kind of like a big thing that I wanted to do with it. And so I realized, I figured as well, like there's a lot of like, comedic opportunity with that as well. But I'm not entirely sure when that idea came about. Like the seeds were already there with the character I've been drawing, like as a stand-in for myself for years. But I'm not. It was still quite early on in the project though. But I don't know when.
Yeah. So your actual process of working, it sounded like earlier you said that you literally sit down in front of your drawing table and you just start drawing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like
for that, for as lonely it was, like for other projects, obviously, if there's other people involved, I can't
sure.
do that.
Sure.
But when it's my own stuff, I think because when I write, I don't sit and write. I will tend to do most of my writing if I'm walking, like if I'm grocery shopping, if I'm having a shower, whatever, I'll be writing in my head and I'll see my projects kind of like as an animation in my head. So it's like all these, like all the characters or whatever. And I'll like, I'll keep playing it in like as an animation. And if something doesn't work, I'll kind of rewind it and try again with something else. Mm-hmm. And so I often, when I come to sit down to write, it's like, I don't need to have any like layouts or any of that stuff because it's already there. And I just need to kind of let it out onto a page. So like, that was my entire process for It's Lonely. Like, obviously I had notes and I had, I have a notebook of, this should happen on this page or whatever, or just, reminders, or like if I thought of like a piece of dialogue that I wanted, that's all stuff that would be written down. But yeah, my notebooks for it are just shocking.
Are you, is it purely a text notebook or are you also doing little thumbnails?
It's got little thumbnails too. But a lot of stuff is stuff that either didn't, it's very like, if you look at like the book and you look at my notes for it, there's like often not a lot of crossover. Like it's often like the kind of, my notes is like a lot of the time it's me figuring stuff out or figuring out if things are going to work. But yeah, like my process is just nonsense. Like it feels very natural. Like it feels very, it just feels very pure. I'm just sat with a piece of paper and a pen and I just, whatever is in my mind just kind of comes out and there's not a lot of thought going into it. Which is just how I love to work. I like it just to feel fluid and honest and raw.
When you can make that work, I mean, obviously that's much harder to do with an IP or something. Where
that's impossible with an IP. Yeah.
Right. But if you can make that kind of a process work on your own stuff, that's powerful. I mean, one of the things, we're close to 300 interviews between our two graphic novel clubs. We've got one for kids and this one for adults. And the thing that strikes me about comics is that's very different than other media is there's not a way to do them. Generally speaking, there's a way to write prose. There's a way to do video games. There's a way to make film. But comics, some people have to have a full script that they've written out. Other people, like you, just start drawing to see what happens. I was talking to a cartoonist a couple of months ago who, what she does is she does the watercolor of the background first. and then draws around what the colors are.
Wow.
Like, right? Like, isn't that sounds insane to me, you know? Well, someone like Dan Clowes told me his last book, we were talking about patience. It's like a 400-page book. He penciled from page 1 to 400. Then he inked from page 1 to 400. Then he lettered from page 1 to 400. Like, not everyone can work that way, but whatever way you work is right in comics. And I think that's
absolutely.
one of the most powerful things about the medium.
And that's another reason why I love it so much, is that there are no rules, you know, and like there's just so much room to just mess around and do what you want. And I think also it's like because comics are cheap to make, I guess, like compared to like a movie where it's like, oh, you've got to pay these actors like millions of dollars and you've got all this expensive equipment and stuff. It's like every scene needs to be like meticulously planned out. With comics, it's like it's a piece of paper, you know. Like you really can mess around and afford to mess around with very little consequence.
So let me ask you about that consequence, though. It seems to me that doing it, fire department. It seems to me that doing it in the manner that you do will lead you to a certain amount of false ends, or writing yourself into a corner, or wow, this isn't working the way that I thought it was when I started drawing this page. So how often do you throw out stuff that you worked on?
Well, with It's Lonely, you know, it did happen a few times, but luckily, like I said, with the structure of the book being so disjointed, I didn't really hit that very often.
Yeah.
With stuff that I'm with the IP stuff that I'm writing now, obviously I have to have like beginning, middle, end. Yeah. This stuff needs to happen, and it needs to be very detailed because, you know, they need to know every bit of information. Projects that I'm writing just for myself in the back of my head, I have more of, you know, I definitely I will have an ending in mind. So it's like I will always have like a point where I know I need to head to. And obviously I'll have like key moments. And as I'm thinking about these ideas and these characters, they will build in my head. So it's like, it's just not on paper, but it's like these stories are like developing and they are kind of branching out. But yeah, I tend to also like, I'm really bad with having to redo stuff. It's like if I make mistakes, I work traditionally. Like everything I do is by hand. Like I color things digitally, but with drawing, it's like I use ink. I don't pencil very heavily. So if I make mistakes, that mistake is just there. You know, I get some people asking me quite a lot about, you know, using traditional medium. Well, what if you go wrong? And my response is, well, what if I go wrong? You know, like I don't care as long as you can tell what something is. It doesn't really bother me. And I think I kind of take that same thing with maybe not to the same extreme with storytelling, but it's like if I kind of maybe back myself into a corner with something, or if I'm like, oh, okay, this element doesn't like play out where I want, you can usually unravel it to some degree, or like you can change stuff with dialogue, or you can, you know, change you can change panel orders. Like a lot of times in It's Only, some of the panels, it's like the original art I have often doesn't match up to the actual book because I switched a lot of panels around when I was lettering, or I realized like stuff didn't quite work in the way that I thought it was going to. But I'm just really good at covering my own mistakes, I think. I think that's probably one of my key skills, bullshitting. So.
Yeah. And when you're sort of reformatting a page, that at that point, that's digital, right? Like you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Just asking questions, because as I say, everybody does it a little bit differently.
I mean, I'm sure I could cut them up, but
well, no, I mean, back in the day, that used to be how people had, because they didn't have scanners, or at least scanners that were a viable thing. Like that was what you had to do. You had to chop up the art, or there was no other way to do it. You know, kind of interesting when you think about it. Like all the pre-technology ways the comics got made.
Sounds like
that comics got made pre-technology actually is what kind of surprises me some days. Did you say that you go straight to ink, that you're not even penciling?
Well, so usually my pencils are very loose. I don't enjoy penciling. I enjoy, so the part of the process I enjoy is thinking about what it looks like in my brain. At that point, I've like solved the puzzle. You know, that's the fun part. That's what's going to be on the page, what's going to be happening. the inking is fun because I'm like, it's finalizing. The penciling is just like the middleman. Nobody's going to see the pencils. I don't care. It's not fun for me because it's like, I already know what's there and it's not the final part. So I don't care. So like, I try, I be as loose with them as possible and as fast as possible. I will draw out faces properly, and I will tend to, you know, draw out where limbs are. But like clothes, I will tend to just go straight in with inks. Like I think I've always kind of been quite fascinated by fashion, and so I think clothes is something I learned to draw quite easily. So that's something that I can just kind of do. Backgrounds as well. Because my perspective is so just in my brain, I just, you know, I know how things look in real life. I think I'm quite an observant person. So because I know how things look, I can just kind of make it up. There are definitely some pages in It's Lonely where the perspective, I'm like, ooh, that's not how things work. But a lot of that reason is because it probably wasn't penciled. But I like working like that. Again, like it's not for everybody. And some people, you know, don't like that kind of the messiness. But with me, art is always about conveying something rather than being a pretty picture. Like I love compositions. I love like working with, you know, stuff that feels like, but it's more, compositions to me is more about what does this evoke? You know, it's not like like Fibonacci. I don't care. Shut up. Go away. You know, it's like there was a page in the book that got pretty popular online where it's like near the end, it's just like the face of the demon character with the circle face, and it's just like a giant white circle surrounded by black, and then I'm like silhouetted against the white, and like it was like it was striking, but I wasn't thinking like, you know, and like that was a very central. I always learned in art school not to do central compositions, but then it's like central compositions are some of my favorite because it makes it so striking because it looks unnatural. And there was there's a lot of like central and very flat compositions in this book because I think it's just so confronting. In a way, it's like it just looks kind of like everything's just so like uniform and just so like, oh, in your face. So it's like it was definitely more about like what does this evoke rather than does this look pretty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. You were saying that you when you tend to sit down, you tend to solve the problems in your head, which I think is a really good way of putting that. But I want to unpick at that a little bit. Is that solving the problem of what you want to say, or solving the problem of how the page flows, right? Because to me, most of comics is not actually the illustrations. It's the gutter. It's the space between them. It's the transition between panels that has you draw a connection between the two things. That's where the magic of comics is, in my mind. I don't know if that made any sense.
No, I get you. I mean, to me, it's like it's one and the same thing. It's like I think one of the reasons I struggle with a little bit with if I'm just drawing or if I'm just writing, I'm not a writer and I'm not an artist. I'm a cartoonist. You know, it's like to me, it's like the way I communicate is with both things. They work together. And I think there's the same thing with like when I'm thinking of things in my head, it's like, yeah, I'm thinking like what's going on this page, but like the layout is kind of, you know, is an important part of that. And it's also, that is storytelling in itself, you know, like with the size of a panel or kind of like the dimensions of a panel, whatever, that's storytelling as well. And it's just it's all, you know, it's all one and the same to me. So
sure.
Like those kind of thoughts, you know, I kind of.
What about when you're writing something for someone else? Let's talk about these IPs without talking about them. But how much are you considering what the page turn is?
Well, a lot. Like page turns, I mean, I think are one of the biggest, you know, tools that comics really have. Is something that, well, I mean, I guess you can do, you know, movies, I guess you can do that. But I think with comics even more so, it's like, it's because it's such a physical, you have to physically turn a page and now, you feel kind of more involved, I think, than you would if it was in a movie or a video game. So that's one of the big thing that I think I consider, and especially like that and final pages as well. Like, and I haven't worked in like writing issues yet, which is what I'm doing now. Is everything I'm writing currently is going to be printed in issues. So Now, a new thing that I'm having to consider that I think is really important is the final page of each issue. So that's been
you kind of got to have a cliffhanger at every single.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I've only written graphic novels before, so I haven't really had to think. Well, you know, I have to structure the story into 5 sections where each section has, you know, like its own kind of peak and its own like, what happens next? So that's been a new challenge. That's definitely like, you know, it's a new kind of style of storytelling, I guess, even though it's the same art form.
Yeah, if you look at other people's work for you know, thoughts, I mean, the one I would point to who's really just a master of that skill is probably Robert Kirkman.
I was just about to say that.
And Walking Dead, because every 20 pages there's a cliffhanger, but when you read the book, you don't realize it. Like when all 6 issues are collected together, it just reads as a seamless thing. But when you're reading each of the installments, like you're like, but what happens next?
Right,
you know?
Absolutely.
It's a neat trick. And comics are really special about the way that time works, because unlike traditional media, film, video games, music, the audience is in control of time in a comic. The audience decides how fast to read any panel, any page, and the audience decides if they go backwards or forwards while they're reading. You don't get that in other media.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's one of the reasons that I like I'm not much of a movie person. I struggle with movies a lot of the time. But it's like I can easily read comics, and I think that's why. It's because like if there's a scene that I'm really invested, I can stick with it and I can like really investigate it. If there's a scene that I don't like, or if somebody's boring me, bye. Like I'm just gonna like read these pages as fast as I can, you know. I think that's like one of like it's so engaging. It's just such an engaging art form.
Yeah. You were saying that you think about the page turn a lot, but you were also saying that It's Lonely was. You didn't know what the page order was.
Right, okay. And this was scary. Because there were some points where I was like, this needs to be a page turn, but I don't know if it's going to be. And okay, I was born with extreme amounts of luck. So if I was like a D&D character, like all of my points are into luck. And so like when I was like, I literally had like a few hours until deadline, and I was gonna like flick through my final thing, and I was like counting where the page turns was, and I was like crossing my fingers and just praying that they were gonna land right. I think only one page turn that I wanted didn't land, and I don't remember where it was, but all of the other ones just happened to work. Right. And it was the same with Billy. Actually, I didn't know where the double pages were going to be, but it just like there was a 50-50 chance of it being right. Luckily it was. It's terrible. But,
And I guess when you're doing things for DC, like you literally don't know where the pages are going to be, because there's advertisements.
Yeah, that was a complicated one. There was, because the one I'm writing does have a double page spread in it, and I said it. They know it's there, so I assume it's going to be. They're not going to print it wrong.
Right.
So I don't really know how that works. Maybe they work the ads around what they're given. I've no idea.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting process. Okay, so you're going through. You're doing this as vignettes. Are you hand lettering this, or is this computer lettering?
It's computer. It's all done digitally. Well, most of it. Some of it's hand lettered. Most of it's not though.
Yeah.
Because I have an idea when I'm drawing the page. I have an idea what the dialogue is going to be. Not like usually I don't know entirely like what exactly the words are going to be. The only exact words I know are usually the jokes. I have a note page on my phone of like, and that's like the only things that I know for sure. Like everything else surrounding that, I have a gist. So when I sit down to letter, you know, I know where I'm going, but that's when I actually think, okay, so like, how do these words flow properly, or you know, kind of, can I do anything smart with this?
Yeah. So you're drawing physically on paper. You then scan it in. Mm-hmm. And you're doing this stuff digitally. You have a big high quality scanner at home, or are you having to go somewhere else to do it?
My scanner isn't very good, but nobody's really complained. Yeah,
Okay.
it's like also
Okay.
I draw pages at the wrong dimensions as well, which I think is really funny. Like the pages don't go to the I draw on the wrong size paper.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my scanner's pretty terrible quality. The if you look closely, it's not great, but I'm really like rough around the edges with art. You know, it's like I kind of love. I mean, it worked with this book. It feels personal, and that's because it is, and everything about it is very DIY.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the, I think definitely, I should consider getting better tools and maybe being better at my job. That might happen if somebody tells me off, but for now I'm kind of just like,
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that's a thing you need to worry about in this particular book, at least.
Mm-hmm.
What size do you work?
I work A4. I work very small. Wait, I have a page. Let me get a page. Let me find one. So this was the page. This was the size that I drew.
Wow.
Here is my hand for scale. They're very small. They're essentially half the size of a standard, comic drawing board, maybe even smaller than half. I don't know. But I just I like drawing small. I think space on a page, it makes me want to fill it more. Like if I have a smaller space, I feel more, okay, this needs to be here. It's like I tend to have a tendency to like over detail things or over kind of, I feel just like anxious when there's like a large white space. If it's smaller, it feels like, contained. I can figure this out easier. But yeah, I draw really tiny.
Yeah. You've got more than a few pages here where it looks though that you've drawn the background and then you've just copied it down the page. Is that right?
Yeah. There's a lot of pages. I have it like. There's also pages where if the panel repeats, I just drew the background on a separate piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of tricks that I used. Like this one, for example. So these panels were where is it? So it was this panel repeated. But there was only elements that were going to change in this one. So I just drew this guy's arms because he starts clapping, but the panel was going to remain the same. There was a lot of tricks that I used, which is why I have because I sell most of my original art. I sell, and there were just like a lot of pages that just aren't sellable just because they're just so so blocky like that. But it worked. It was something that I wanted to do, and it's like I could have spent longer on this book, but I didn't want to. And I knew what it was, I knew what the book was. I knew what it was going to be, and I didn't want it to be like this, thing that went on forever.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated that you drew the arm in a blank panel, because usually what I'm used to is people photostatting the art, the repeated panel, and laying the repeated panel down and then drawing on top of it. That
would make more sense. But this was fast. I didn't even pencil that. I was just eyeing it. I was like, oh, so where are this guy's arms? Yeah. And I was like, well, they're about there. And then I just kind of edited it over. And then if it didn't quite match up, I would just draw a line digitally.
That's neat. I like that. That's a cool way of working.
It's ridiculous. It's what I just work in really just bizarre ways.
Yeah. Well, let's
people ask me my process. I'm like, oh.
Let's talk about the speed of creation too. Are you doing a page a day? Are you doing more, less?
Well, with It's Lonely, I was doing 2 pages a day, sometimes even 3, just because it was really simple. It was just really basic. There's not really a lot happening. If this is a standard page, a lot of the panels don't have backgrounds. The ones that do, because it's so small, there's not really. The background, it looks detailed, but it's really simple and it's really tiny. So the detail is really, it's just really scribbly. And so this ended up being really fast. And a lot of the time, my character has this face. I don't know if you can see that. So, which is obviously really simple to draw. So I was doing a lot. Usually if I'm working on something like the DC project that I'm writing and drawing right now, it's going to be, a page a day. And I'm going to have to draw, the standard comic size for that, because I don't think they're going to let me get away with messing up their borders. so for like stuff like that, like it will be a page a day, but with my own work, because I cut corners and I, can just do stuff like that. It can be two or three pages a day, which I enjoy a lot more. Like I don't like spending a long time on something because I get bored and I kind of have like the attention span of a 8-year-old. So I really struggle with that kind of thing, or spending too long on something. I just like, sometimes it's like if I'm doing a variant cover, sometimes a variant cover will like take me a week, even though it should just take me like a day and a half. But because I spent too long on it, I get bored and then I don't want to come back to it. So I think like speed is something that's like really important to my process, just because of my own, my own brain. It's like I need to be enjoying myself. Like I need to be having fun with it.
Yeah.
And it needs to be like a certain speed of certain like, oh, I'm having fun. Like new page. Yes, let's keep going. Like it has to be that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, some people are all about the specificity of craft, right? Like it's got to be perfect in their heads.
Yeah. But I'm like, I've never been a perfectionist, which is another thing that I think sets me apart, because I'm not a natural artist. I don't consider myself a natural artist. Like it's something that like I kind of decided I wanted to do. And I just like, I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoy art. I love drawing. That's the thing. It's like, but I never had that natural perfectionism. And it's just not something that I've ever cared about, like I've always been like, as a kid, when I was drawing and it was like, terrible art. Like I used to draw like Pokemon fan art a lot. Like I used to like just try to design my own Pokemon, and I would put them online like so proudly, like this is the best thing anyone has ever seen. And I've always been that person. Like I don't think I've ever felt like kind of ashamed or embarrassed or like about my art. And I think that kind of like is another reason why I managed to draw so much, because I don't have that. Like I just don't, as long as you can tell what it is and it evokes an emotion, that's all I care about. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah. You've got this really interesting balance between the physicality of the page and the digital tools, that you put things online and because that's the modern way of doing it, but you're still doing it kind of old school, pen and ink, drawing it.
Yeah. I mean, because people ask me about this a lot, and I think it's just, I always explain it as just my caveman tendencies of just like, like pick up pen, draw thing, thing has fire. like it's like having a physical page of like something I've done that I can look at and be like, oh, I did this with my hands. Like I just like, I enjoy that. It feels very human to me. I have a lot of like, digital art makes a lot of sense for comics because there are so many tricks and things that you can do, and it can speed up the process. I just don't enjoy it. Like it doesn't give me the same kind of feeling of like crafting something with my meat sticks. I feel like I need that. And also one of the big things which I didn't anticipate, and I didn't plan for this, but it just kind of happened, was my art. Like because when people found out I was drawing traditionally, people started inquiring about wanting to buy pages. And eventually my current art dealer, Paolo, he owns Cadence comic art, whatever it's called. And they they're an art comic art dealership. And he approached me a few years back and was like, we can help you, sell your pages. And I was kind of like, is this going to be, I was kind of skeptical. But eventually he persuaded me. He sold one of my variant covers that I did really fast and like for like a price that was like way higher than I ever thought it would go for. And I was like, oh my God, like people actually want to like buy original art, like original comic art. And I've been with them for like 2 years now. And it's one of, I make more money selling original art than I do from the money I get from comics, It's like if I do a variant cover, the price of the original art is more than the price I get paid to actually draw the image, which is insane to me, and just kind of shows how underpaid comics is. So that's another reason, like when, if kids are asking about art, or kids are like, I'm drawing these comics by hand, but I'm thinking like, I want to get a tablet. What tablet should I get? I'm like, well, if you're drawing by hand already and you enjoy that, don't stop, if you have something physical, that's a product, if we like, everybody needs money to live. So I think, business wise, it's a great idea to do that. That's not something that I had considered at the time. But in retrospect, I'm like, I'm so glad that I, because there was a lot of people pushing for, digital art. Like when I was working in concept art, I still drew by hand, which is crazy. Nobody does that. but it was just like that's how I work, that's how I function, and I can't. I'm too stubborn to change.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I would just suggest for your future, if you continue working in comics, keep back a certain percentage of your art for when you become 50 and 60, and you can retire from it. Rather than, I understand like I need money now, like it's good to get some cash going, but those pages, presuming that you continue to produce art that's of this quality, and I have no reason to believe that will ever change.
I'm hoping it'll be better in the future.
Yes, but I think that this will become more valuable. The physical pages will become much more valuable to you over time.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult. It's difficult to know, because sometimes I think, well, my pages sell well now because I'm kind of something that people are interested in at this time. It's like, oh, people keep throwing around that whole future of comics thing, which, okay, whatever. But that's like, now that's a selling point right now. In the future, will people be bored? Will my name not mean anything? There's all these things. So it's like, I do keep back some pages, but I think if I can sell something now, if it's in high demand now, it's difficult to know though. It's difficult to know like where my career is going to go. It's difficult to know what the future is going to hold for me and for comics as a whole. But yeah, I definitely.
I know a couple of artists who more or less gave away their art early on.
Yeah, I had made the same mistake with some pages from Billy.
Right, and if they had held on to it, they could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
In fact, Sam Keith, the artist of Sandman, gave me a couple pages from Sandman #1, and like just gave them to me. He's like, here you go.
Wow.
I don't like this art. You take it. And one of them I sold for 10 grand, and then the guy I sold it to sold it for 20 grand.
Oh my gosh.
Like 15 years later, these things do have value. So it's very minor thing that I wanted to bring up, but just always good to try it.
No, you're right. You're completely right.
Do a thing. Let's talk about coloring for a minute. You don't use a lot of color in here. It's mostly a black and white book, but there is some pretty striking color work. What's your process for deciding what should have color and what shouldn't have color, and what color you're going to use?
Yeah. So my thing, I've never studied color theory. I've never studied anything. Color is not something that comes naturally to me, and it's not something that really interests me enough that I've explored it as much as I have, drawing. So color for me is, again, the same thing as composition. It's like, what does this evoke? And it's like, so when I'm coloring something, it's like if I tend to just use very flat colors, because it's like I don't care to render. I'm very impressed by people who can, like the people who are good at rendering things. I'm like, I'm very impressed. I just can't do it, and also I don't have interest for it for my own work. But yeah, with deciding which pages we're going to have color on it, it was more kind of a narrative tool. Of a lot of the flashbacks have color just to distinguish them from present day. It's mostly the black and white stuff is mostly the present day stuff, and then color stuff tends to be the flashbacks. Unless it's like a scene that I felt could benefit from color. Like there was a scene, like there's a whole kind of like theater segment like halfway through, which was like supposed to be like a present day. I mean, it was very abstract and stuff, and it wasn't something that actually happened. I didn't just teleport into a magic theater, but it was something that I was like, this probably would benefit from having color on it, just because I think it would just be more impactful if it did. I don't think there was like ever much like thought that goes into it, past that. It was just like, will this be more impactful? Yes, I'll color it. I think that was kind of all it was. But okay. I mean, for like color choices and stuff, I'm really fast because I don't understand it. I just kind of, it's more of a vibe. I think like that's my quote. Like, how does ZOE work? It's more of a vibe. Like it's more of like, how do I feel this is gonna look, and that's just, I just go for it. So that's kind of all there is. It's really not very clever.
No, it's always worth talking about these things because everybody approaches things differently, and I learn a lot about comics from the things that people say and the things that people don't say, and the way they think about comics, because it's different for everybody. It's the strength of it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think also with like color, especially, I got really stuck for a few years there, like back when I was, I don't know, like in my late teens. I was like, I really need to learn how to do color, how color works. And I would try and like watch these like YouTube videos, but it would just like send me in circles of like, I don't understand this and I don't want to, I don't care. And it's like, if I don't care to learn something, I'm going to really struggle with it. And so I just thought like my main philosophy with art is just like, to have fun, you know, like if you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy what you're doing, that's
Mm-hmm.
just so much more
Mm-hmm.
important, and it's so much more, and it shows. It shows.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I don't enjoy color, I don't need to do color. You know, like you can you just like black and white is like I mean manga
Yeah.
mostly black and white. Manga
Yeah.
outsells comics no end. You know, it's like, and I just it's not necessary for me at least. I know for some people it's obviously way more important, but like that's
Sure.
everybody's art is completely different, and everybody's idea with their own art is completely different. And I don't think there's one standard or there's like a rule or you
Yeah.
know. So it's like whatever works for you, you know. And if that is,
Yeah.
you know,
Comics. I fucking love comics. This is why I love comics, because whatever it is, it's always right. Mostly right. It's not always right. Sometimes it's wrong. But yeah, I'm impressed by this book. I'm more impressed by this book, honestly, after talking to you now and hearing how you work on it and hearing how you think about it. And
how nonsensical it was.
And that it wasn't as I mean, it was intentional, but it wasn't necessarily deliberate. No, that's probably not the right way to put it.
No,
I don't know.
It wasn't like preemptively planned. Yeah. It was just.
There you go. Yeah. And I find I applaud you for that very, very much. Very, very much.
Yeah. Don't encourage it.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, if it makes work like this is exactly the kind of book that I love putting out to our club members, because this is the kind of stuff that they're probably not going to inherently pick up on their own. You know, people tend to get attracted to genre, you know, absolutely. And this is not genre. That actually reminds me of a question. Did you, as you were making this or as you were getting ready to make this, did you spend any time looking at what other people were doing in autobio, or were you just like, I'm just going to do my own?
I didn't want to be influenced. So I mean, I've read autobio works in the past, not a lot. I've only read a handful. I read Spinning by Tilly Walden. I've read Blankets by, oh my God, what's his name? Craig something. I've read those two. But when I was working on it, I was thinking maybe I should be seeing what other people were doing. But then I knew I would think, you know, either because obviously this book is very different to what of those, you know, Blankets and Spinning. Those two, I think they follow the kind of not formula of autobios, but they're a lot more kind of, you know, how you would imagine an autobio would look. Mine was very much not, and I thought if I was going to read a bunch of them, I would start kind of like doubting what I was doing. I felt like I needed to make it in a vacuum, and so it was just the purest kind of my brain to page that it could be. So no, I was trying to not be, you know, influenced by anything.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I think you would like a number of pieces from like the 70s to the 90s. I'm thinking particularly Julie Doucet, you would probably find.
I don't recognize that name.
Julie Doucet did My New York Diaries.
Cool.
Is probably her most famous thing. She did a book called Dirty Plot for Drawn and Quarterly. And plot is apparently slang for pussy, so the comic's called Dirty Pussy. Nice. Which I always thought was interesting. I think you probably like Phoebe Glockner. There's a number of well,
you should send me a list.
Well, yeah, we'll just send me an email. Yeah, we'll just send me an email. Just because, you know, it's an interesting form, and there's a lot of interesting things that are being done with it. But I really, really think that this was just a spectacular book. It was well thought out, and especially because it wasn't well thought out. That's the thing I love about it. I genuinely do. Okay, let's start doing the wrap up. I have two questions. I always start on the same question. I end on the same questions. The two questions for the wrap up. The first one is there anything else that you've got coming up that you want to plug? You may not be able to. We've talked about you're working on IP stuff you can't talk about. Is there anything you can talk about though?
No. All of the things I'm working on are unannounced right now, but you know, I think everybody here probably follows my socials already, so just keep a lookout. You know, there are cool things coming, probably very different to, you know, what you might expect them to be. But, yeah.
Are we gonna see more work soon in the sort of the vein of It's Lonely or Billy?
There's a project I did start like kind of teasing called Head Trauma that I want to do, and it's like my own thing, and I think that kind of like is definitely like Billy. I want to do like more like drama, kind of like slow, kind of like people drama stuff, but also it has a lot of the kind of like trippiness and absurdity of It's Lonely, because I really enjoyed that in that book. And like Head Trauma is like I'll do it in the future at some point, but it's about a guy whose intrusive thoughts start manifesting themselves like in reality, largely in the form of accidentally exploding people's heads. And it's about a road trip between him and his half sister, and they're basically trying to find out why he's accidentally got this superpower of exploding people's heads and trying to figure it out. And it's kind of, you know, I keep calling it kind of like, it's like a drama horror comedy thing, and I love it, and it's absolute nonsense. So that's like my next thing that I'm going to be making by myself that I can't talk about because it's not, you know, not NDA'd.
Can't wait for more. I really can't. I cannot wait to see. I mean, I'm interested enough in what you draw with other people or write for other people, but I can't wait to see more of what you make with and for yourself, because
I mean, with regards to like autobio stuff, I keep saying that I don't want to do one again for a while, because I think when I was making that book, it was more for like I needed to make it. There was stuff in that book that I just needed to let out in a very specific way. It was like I don't have anything else to say now, and I'm not one of those people who's like I have to constantly put this stuff out and like put my, you know, I don't know.
Sure.
But in the future, I imagine like when I'm a lot older, I'll want to do kind of more of a, you know, retrospective or whatever the word is of It's Lonely, and kind of, you know,
I wasn't specifically talking autobio. I mean, you know, fiction's fine too. I'm more interested in seeing you write and draw.
Yeah, that means a lot to me, because that's what I love doing. You know, that's kind of what keeps me going. So
nice. Well, I hope you have hundreds of pages more in you. I can't wait to read them all. And then my final question is as I said, this is somewhere near our 300th interview, and so therefore a lot of people watch this series who want to make comics, and they don't know what to do. They get scared of making comics, or they get overwhelmed by the idea of making comics. And so I always like to ask cartoonists, what's your piece of advice for someone who wants to make comics? And it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It can be an emotional thing. It can be a spiritual thing. It can be any kind of way you want, philosophical thing. But if someone's like, Miss Thorogood, I want to make comics, how do I do it? What do you say to them?
Well, I think my most practical piece of advice is to use the internet. I think the internet is so important nowadays, and it's such a powerful tool. And you know, without Twitter, I wouldn't be where I am. I think I did some talks at universities for comic students, and I found like the biggest thing was like a lot of them, you know, they were in their early 20s and they wanted to make comics, and they had all these ideas and these pictures and these drawings, but they were either like too scared to post them online because of that kind of like perfectionism, or, oh, what are people going to think of this? And that's something that you just have to kill. You know, you have to just remove that. You have to just be kind of like, love what you do and be unashamed of it. Otherwise it's just not, you know, this isn't something that's going to work. You know, be passionate and let people know that you're passionate. I think that's another big thing. Especially online. It's like online is where editors and people who can help you, people in industry will be looking at you. If you post stuff, if you're getting your work out there, if you're, you know, kind of networking with the right people, you will be seen by people who can help you and will keep tabs on you. And I think one of the biggest things is posting ideas that you have with passion, with you know, when I was working on Billy, it was something that was close to my heart. It was something that I wanted to do for like a lot of personal reasons. And when I post about it, I think kind of that energy kind of comes through a lot. I just think, yeah, like being proud and unashamed of yourself online, and like keep throwing it up there, you know, because it's like one of the biggest things in comics, I think, is rejection. And that's something that you kind of have to go through, but you can't give up with it. You just have to, if you really believe in yourself and what you can do, I think just one of the most important things is just to keep throwing your work online, even if it feels like it's into the void. You know, like everybody starts with 0 followers, with no fans, with no readers. Everybody starts like on the same page. You know, you just have to keep. And sometimes it takes years. Like it took me years, you know, to even get to a point where I could like, you know, throw my stuff online. And even when I had like, you know, I think it took like 2 years to get to like 500 followers or something. You know, it's a process. But I think that's my most practical thing, is just like use the internet. I think it's so important these days. It's just like, and it's such a powerful tool. Like it can be a terrible place, you know, it really can be. But at the same time, it's just like utilize everything around you and make sure you're seen, you know, like shout at people.
Yeah, no, very good. Very, very, very good. Because as you said, Billy wouldn't exist. This wouldn't exist if you hadn't been doing those things. I think that's fantastic. And I'm glad that they exist. I truly, truly am, Zoe. I you know, as a 50-something-year-old man, I love it. It's great. I want more. Give me more.
I'm trying my best.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let me do a little bookkeeping here. If Ben will put me on a 1, we'll be back to you in a second, Zoe. So this is our book, and as I said, if you're sitting at home and you don't know what to read, and people are still sitting at home, especially actually in these COVID times, this is a really, really good book, and it is powerful, and it is smart, and it is intelligent. So buy a copy of this. Get it from your local store, or you can get it from us. If you get it from us, we'll have a special signed book plate that you can only get from us. There's the little thing there. The only thing is we're out of copies right this second, because like yesterday, I think some sort of Facebook group found out that we had the signed book plates, and we sold like 7 copies in a day and a half. That was kind of crazy that how many went out the door. So I've got more copies coming though. Next week we're going to have more copies with the book plates, and that's really good. Next month's book, which is actually February, which is now, in 10 days, in fact, is our next interview for the Adult Club, and the book is Too Dead to Die by Mark Guggenheim and Howard Chaykin. And I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with Howard Chaykin, because that man knows how to talk. So that should be a really, really good interview. 10 days on a Wednesday. Look for it. And then our kids club this month is Unfamiliar by Haley Newsome. That is 2 Sundays from now. And I will be talking to her about making comics. And this one's a web comic. She's like completely the polar opposite of Zoe here, in that she's all on the web and it's nothing but that. And I love it. Comics are great. Let me thank everybody for watching this show. Let me thank my staff. I have a Zoe who works here, so I'm going to thank my Zoe, KATT and Katie, who are the best crew of people working at a comic shop you could ever have. They're the ones who let me sit and babble about comics on the air. Let me thank Jordan, who's our producer, who does all the backstage stuff that no one else sees, but is all really important. And I want to thank Ben for running the camera and running the show and doing all those things. So thank you all. And thank you for everybody who's a member of the club. If you are not a member of the club, please join. We'll get you great books, and we love comics, as you can tell, and we love talking to people who make comics. So it's all good. It's all good. Otherwise, Zoe, I want to thank you for participating in this. I hope you had fun.
I did. Thank you for having me.
Good. I was worried because there's a scene in the book where you're like, I really don't like doing this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I'm
getting better though.
Yeah, I know. I wanted you to be happy from this, so that it looks like
I had a good time. Thank you for having me.
Very good, very good. All right, well, thank you very much. We'll talk to you later.